Hey guys, so I think today is going to be one of the more vloggier vlogs. First off, I have these Christmas tree cuttings that I've scraped the ends and dunked in some rooting hormone. You don't really have to worry about the soil drying out. It's the rainy season. It's been raining every couple days, and you see the soil's gotten pretty dark, so I don't think we have to worry about these drying out like you'd usually have to worry about. I've got 3 right here, and got some more over here, cut at different lengths. Couldn't really find any instruction on the proper way of doing this, so I scraped some of them, didn't scrape some of them. As you can see, I've added an additional quad op amp. There are a few more buffers, and the ground is buffered by 2 buffers in parallel because a single buffer can outsource and sink the amount of current needed. But the result, this oscillator is on, it's not off, and you don't hear it coming back through the mix. So obviously my problem was the ground. Also, you can see my resistor divider is 2 1K resistors instead of 2 470 ohm resistors. It can be this high of a value because the ground is buffered. If you tune an octave lower, it sounds actually pretty awesome. All the way, it's kind of trashy out this end, but if you mix it somewhere in the middle, if you notice there's no volume dip in the mix, that's because I put a buffer at the output. There's actually a lot of buffers all over the place now, but the result is it's a little more balanced. And this is why I'm thinking about putting a, well, I've just ordered some 4013s, flip-flops, so I can I could divide. The thing is, the output of the preamp is actually, roughly, it's a square wave, almost. It's got some sloped sides, but it's enough to trigger the flip-flop, and I should be able to get an octave down. But rather than mixing it into the mix, I would instead have a switch to switch between the oscillator and the octave down, which would, of course, multiply it by the octave down like you hear here. I think it really sounds neat. And just as before, the modulator has the same frequency range as it did in the last video. And of course, the true bypass switch works the same. Yeah, this thing is has much lower noise than the last one. And that's because of the buffered virtual ground. The last one was just a resistor divider. Damn it, where did I put my notebook? Oh, it's under the scanner. Just move that aside. Make sure my recording hasn't stopped. My camera does not have a very good battery life, so you gotta watch it. Okay, I think this one is it. Yeah, it shows the bypass switch. Is it even in focus? Well, now it is. Just zoom in a little bit. So right here we have our little power supply section. I'll just zoom in so I can show you that. We have a 4001 on the input for everything. None of that dual separated ground stuff. It's not needed. In fact, this is better. I've got a 1 microfarad decoupling capacitor across the input. Of course, it's center negative, just like the last one. And I've got the 1K resistor divider, kind of like the virtual ground. But here I have the two two buffers for the virtual ground. These buffers can source and sink current. What's really nice about these is it's a lot less likely to get thrown off balance, which was causing the oscillator to bleed back into the mix on the previous revisions. Right here we have the input. I'm showing the bypass switch and the direction. These directional arrows on the switch show when it is engaged in the on position. Then all these switches will be engaged towards that direction. And so just like before, we have the input, the 10 meg pull down, the bypass switch. The 10 meg prevents popping on the bypass switch. The 10K pull down after the decoupling capacitor, or should I say the coupling capacitor. Yeah. Removes any DC that comes in through here, and also it prevents it from triggering. It goes beep 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 if you kind of move the string just up and down a little bit, because it's kind of like a high pass filter. Prevents those low frequencies from creating unnecessary noise, like my voice, unnecessary noise. And then we've got these two buffers after the preamp. And this one goes to the mix, and this just prevents it from getting tainted, because I do want a line coming out of here for the 4013 flip-flop. It's a dual flip-flop, so I can actually do 2 octaves down if I wanted to, or 1. I'd have a switch to select between the two. It should arrive before before December 10th. So that's why I couldn't really do it this week, is because I don't have the 4013s. Damn phone. Here's the oscillator. Works just as last week's. And I've got the 10K resistor on here. This also helps a lot with the noise. And this 10K resistor, without it, the modulator doesn't seem to work as well. It doesn't modulate as deep. And right here we have the indicator, again with the directional arrow. Stop moving, camera. Again with the directional arrows, and the 470 ohm resistor, and our LED is connected across V plus and V minus, which is pretty much the same as the input rails. So it's not referenced in any way to our virtual ground, but most of the rest of the circuit is. And I don't know if I've said it before, but this 4001 prevents reverse. In the final design, I'm not going to be using an electrolytic capacitor. I'm going to be using a multi-layer ceramic capacitor. So the reverse polarity isn't going to really hurt it, but in this case it'll blow the capacitor sky high, I assume. But yeah, check out my other video for why this is used, why these two diodes are used instead of a feedback resistor, and how this modulator works. And oh yeah, and then there's this buffered output, and this prevents that dip that I was having a trouble with last time. So I can still continue to use the 200K potentiometer, and I don't have to worry about the dip in the volume because this is very high impedance input, so it doesn't drag it down. And that way, independent of your amplifier, it won't behave differently if you're using Behringer Euphoria or your bass amplifier. In the demonstration I just did, it's the bass amplifier. So I hope you guys liked this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and if you may have noticed, there isn't a channel showcase or a Q&A at the moment. But definitely tune in for next week. And as always, thanks for watching.